Hello and welcome to the Trash Talk Podcast. I'm your gentleman Sergej. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing fine. Actually, in studio today.
Yeah, I mean, that is a special thing, but also we did that like just a couple weeks back.
Yeah, still. I traveled multiple countries in that time, back and forth. So
Yeah, I suppose that is true. But today we're talking about science.
ooh,
But I was gonna say basically talking about bad science. Well, not all science is good science, and we're not gonna point out specific examples of bad science, although there are plenty, and maybe they'll come up in examples. But primarily, we're gonna talk about why bad science happens. I suppose what makes science bad.
yeah,
What makes bad science? I don't know. You'll see.
something like that.
I guess the first thing to point out in this regard is when it's not actually scientists doing it, you get misuse of statistics or like quoting scientific papers selectively such that it seems like they're saying something that they aren't. Like that's sort of a very obvious like misuse of science. Statistics are probably the most egregious example because it's very easy to find a correlation and then just claim it has this type of causal connection when sometimes it's the opposite. Like it's not that A causes B, but that B causes A. Sometimes they're not directly linked at all. My favorite example of that is still when they correlate behavior, like certain like web searches for furry and like a proportion of this thing. I don't know, and then it's like it turns out both are just population heat maps because they just didn't adjust for population density, and so whatever it is they're comparing, like I don't know, like alcohol sales and searches for furry, and it's like okay, yeah, no, those correlate.
Yeah.
And it turns out they correlate because there's more people there.
Would make sense, yeah.
And so statistics in particular can be very easily misused.
But I'm not sure if I would call this misuse, just like misunderstanding.
It depends on, I guess, if it's done on purpose or not.
Yeah. If it's done on purpose, then yes, that would definitely be misuse. But most often, I think it's just like doing it wrong. Because, man, statistics are hard.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's bad science either way, but it's obviously worse if someone is doing it intentionally than if it's just because of misunderstanding. But yeah, no, that's, I think one of my favorite examples of like bad statistics is whenever it is just, look, here's a population heat map, and here's the same population heat map again. It's a strong correlation. It's like, yeah, I suppose.
Not really. Yeah, because I remember trying recently, like, I think a couple months ago, to analyze some statistics as well, and dude, I could not figure it out. And just searching around for how to do the statistics for this particular thing, I found a couple things, but they were like way too technical for me to understand.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's another problem, although it's not necessarily bad science itself, is that a lot of science is just not very approachable.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are people who also dedicate themselves to making science more approachable, like science communicators who actually explain complex scientific concepts in ways that are more understandable.
Mm-hmm.
Now, oftentimes it's good enough to understand what they're talking about. It's sometimes not good enough to like replicate what they're talking about. As you said, right? Like statistics, someone can probably explain to you why two things correlate without you necessarily being able to then apply the same procedure to different data to try to find similar correlations. So, but yeah, statistics are hard. That is true, and I feel like sometimes even scientists make the mistake of like trying to say like, oh, these two stats correlate, therefore they must have a causal connection.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes you see papers where it's like, okay, yeah, what was it? Fast food makes you depressed. It's like, does it though? Or is it just that people with depression are less prone to like cooking 3-course meals and are more likely to just purchase fast food? Like, yeah, there's a correlation between fast food and depression.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not as confident as you seem to be that it's this one direction of causal connection. Like, sure, eating better and healthier is probably good for your mental health to like some degree, but like to like clinical depression levels, I don't think so.
I don't know.
I mean, that's the thing, right? It might well be both.
Yeah.
But it's almost inconceivable that it's just fast food causing depression,
Oh yeah,
rather than
absolutely.
depression causing fast food, right? Like that.
Yeah.
So drawing too much of a conclusion from limited data is limited data. That's also one thing I think.
Yeah.
Like cherry picking data points, terrible, and also something that again like is actually done quite a lot. Whereas like there are 5 statistics, and one happens to agree with the thing that I wanted to say, so therefore I'll use that one. Yeah, I think cherry picking is mostly, but there are
Also, not just the statistics themselves, like inside of statistics, like individual data points, you can cherry pick those.
Yeah,
And that happens, like couple sometimes as well.
yeah, and then you get things like p-value hacking where they look at a bunch of things and they'll just like pick the one that has the best correlation. It's like okay, if you have a data set and there's like a bunch of, I mean that's actually, I think of them as columns, but like a bunch of data points for each entry.
Yeah.
Then you're bound to find some that correlate in some way. That doesn't necessarily mean it's meaningful, because if you have enough different things that you're looking at, like there's gonna be something that correlates, and then if you redo the same thing with new data, it might not correlate again.
True.
So there's also that thing, and then sometimes you can like combine 2 data points to try to make the correlation stronger. And I mean, it's not entirely invalid, right? Like that's the worst part about it. Sometimes you can use the same techniques you would to refine your data to also turn noise into a meaningful correlation.
Yes.
And it's hard to distinguish which is which. There are ways you can do that where I know from a machine learning context, for example, you would split your data set into a training set and a validation set, and then only if the validation set still pans out, then you use it, and that is to minimize noise in the training data affecting your result. Now, you can still overtrain on the validation data, like to overfit to that, which is also a problem. Yeah. You split into 3 ways. You have the training, validation, and test. But the test data you're not supposed to fit to, because it's only supposed to verify how good it is. So you fit to the validation data essentially. You train on the test data you train on the training data. You then check multiple different training algorithms basically against the validation data, see which one's best, and then you just use the test data to determine how good it actually is, without actually like further training on it. And similar concepts I'm sure can be used in statistics as well. I'm not as knowledgeable on.
I haven't heard of the 3-way split before.
That's literally intro to ML. That is like.
Okay, interesting.
That is like fairly basic actually. The 3-way thing. I first didn't get it either. I was like, what's the difference between test and validation? But you're not supposed to like. You're supposed to use a test data basically exactly once. It's usually like 5% of the total data set or something. It's not a lot. And you split the rest like 80-20 for training and validation.
Okay.
Not always. There's other things as DSK for validation. You can do all sorts of funny things with that. And 80-20 is also not like a hard rule. It depends on the size of the data set as well. If you have a very large data set, you might actually split it more like 90-10 or something. If you have a very small data set, you might split it closer to 50-50. So you actually, because if you just have like one data point in validation, it's not very useful.
Yeah.
I mean, for machine learning, that's the main thing. You want a large data set to train on.
Usually, yes.
But also, I think I'm once again derailing the topic a little bit.
Slightly, yeah. What was the next point?
What
we were talking about?
Well, okay, so we have weaponization of science and misuse of statistics. I kind of rolled into one because it's very closely related. I guess our next point would be publish or perish.
Ooh.
So oftentimes professors and researchers are judged based on how much they publish. And correlated, I think I also have it as a point, is citations is another metric by which you're oftentimes judged. So,
I mean, publish or perish mostly comes into play when you just cannot survive if you do not publish.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you just don't get enough money to live on. So you just are forced to publish as often as you can.
Yeah, it's also because I thought about this earlier today when I thought about the topic. It's like, it's kind of weird that universities are usually where most of the research gets done, right? But it's also where you teach people. Like, it makes sense if you're like for new researchers to learn from existing researchers, obviously. But most people that go to universities don't do that to go into academia.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird how those relate. I'm not saying there's like a distinct better model that I can come up with, because you also need to finance it somehow, and I think the students also sometimes help finance, like the educational aspect helps finance the research. Um, so it's tough, but the fact that the same person that runs research also has to teach students, and those are two wholly distinct skill sets,
Yes.
is a bit weird. I'm not sure to what degree like publisher parent applies to like the professors at our university. Well, our local university,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't go there, but because I think that one is a little more focused on the educational side. But yeah, research universities, it's gonna be like if you go there as a professor and you don't publish anything, you're probably not gonna get a tenure. You're probably gonna get fired, right? And it's like if you're just there to teach, that's a bit weird. And yeah, no, the incentives are off, right? Where you have to get something published, and that doesn't necessarily incentivize good science. I mean, obviously, incentivizing science to be published in a general sense is not necessarily bad, but I think the idea of just like you have to publish something soon is like, but my data isn't ready yet. I still want to like do some verification, whatever. And it's like, yeah, no, just publish it as it is.
Yeah.
Not optimal. Yeah.
Even worse if you then like don't have anything, and like you do have the data, and it shows that like what you have been researching does not actually apply, like it doesn't work out. Do you then still publish it without this validation data, or do you nudge the validation data to
Yeah, I think
get it published?
that's the other part, right? Publication bias I wrote down is if you have a negative result, you're almost never gonna publish it, right? Because
Yeah.
what reputable paper wants, not paper, publication, what do I call it? Journal.
Journal.
Wants to publish. It's like, oh, hey, here's the thing we tried, it didn't work. Because it's boring and you don't want to read it. And that's tough. Because negative results are actually kind of important for science. And even worse, when it comes to reproducing things, right? Like reproduction studies are almost never published in like the big journals. And it's kind of important to know if the science that has been found out before is reproducible. Both a positive and a negative result is kind of meaningful there.
Yeah.
And there are very few actual like high-profile reproduction studies, which obviously is another point that I have written down here. The replication crisis. In I think it was in psychology and sociology in particular, there were like a ton of studies that purported to show this thing or that thing that were like never replicated for like a long time, and then when someone tried to replicate a bunch of them, it turned out that like most of them didn't pan out in the replication. So a lot of stuff actually turns out wasn't very good, and we just believed it because no one bothered to try it, right? The Stanford Prison Experiment is like a very famous example where actually it turns out the guards that misbehaved were like actually nudged on by the researchers. The marshmallow test, I think also there's, I don't know if they ever tried to reproduce that specifically, but the long-term study of that, where the kids that had the willpower to actually like resist eating the one marshmallow, it's a marshmallow test, right? You set down a marshmallow from the kid and you're like, hey, if you don't eat this until I'm back, then you get another one. And so the kids that didn't take it at first actually did a lot better in life, right? They were much more successful in their life. And this is like, and yeah, it turns out that a lot of that probably is overstated at the very least. But it's a longitudinal study, right? Those are hard to replicate in general because it just takes a while.
Yeah.
But you know, there are a lot of those sort of problems that are like actually like within the scientific field, and most of them are related to like scientific papers and journals, where the incentive is to publish. Certain things just won't get published in major journals because they're not seen as worthwhile, because it's always just the exciting new cutting edge stuff that gets published. And whenever someone is like, hey, actually I tried to replicate this and it didn't pan out, crickets, right? Like, you don't get it published, despite the fact that actually disproving something that seemed to have been proven before is basically just as important.
Yeah.
And again, in the secondary thing, maybe less directly useful, but still kind of good for the body of knowledge overall. Like, showing that it can be reproduced is also something, right? Like, I mean, it doesn't change our understanding because we already assumed the previous one to be true, but it still helps solidify it. So,
I mean, it might improve our understanding of it. if the new validation study did find out a couple more edge cases or like
Yeah.
side info on this.
I mean, at that point, you might even be able to publish it as further research. But yeah, no, it's oftentimes just like we redid their experiment. It works exactly out as they said it. Doesn't sound as important, but sometimes it is, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you had a measurement error that you just didn't account for, right? Sometimes maybe there is like a flaw with the setup that isn't really recognized, and then it turns out the experiment doesn't work. There are some famous cases. There is cold fusion, obviously. So this is a
What was the case there?
chemists claimed to have found cold fusion. Turns out that a lot of how they were measuring things just was pretty flawed, and so they basically claimed to have cold fusion in water, and so the water heated up beyond anything they could explain otherwise, and it turns out that part of it was flawed with how they were measuring. They were only measuring heat, nothing else, which is measuring radiation would be kind of useful. And then apparently some of the heat that they measured did actually have other explanations. I think I don't know if it was the original experiment or one of the experiments that tried to reproduce it that also found a lot of heat. Ended up actually having an exposed wire from the thermometer itself actually heating up the water, which is terribly ironic.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it can happen, right? And I mean, in that case, also the reason why they went public early with it is because they were afraid it was going to get leaked, and so they went public before they had done all their validation, and before the paper was peer reviewed, which is a whole other thing. And that's not it's less of something that I want to critique for. Like, I mean, obviously in this case, yes, but it's not a flaw in the process.
This reminds me of a more recent case where, like, I think a year ago,
The superconductor one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a team claimed to have found a room temperature superconductor, which is like it's not one of those holy grail type of things. And
room temperature, ambient pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And turns out, I think again the thing that they found was not that it conducted really well. It was that it had certain magnetic effects that all superconductors, I believe, have, but also some things that aren't superconductors have the same effect. And so it turns out it was a superconductor. Just
might visually look like the same effect, but
okay.
But actually, magnetically, it's like slightly different. But they didn't test enough. Like one of the people that was part of it published it early, like leaked it, and then they, in a rush, then published the paper itself that they were working on.
And I mean that's not like, at least that's not a systematic flaw. I think a lot of the journals that act as the gatekeepers for scientific papers, they do actually have systematic flaws. Like you said, right? Like the fact that they only publish exciting stuff, especially like the big ones, right? If you have Science and Nature, for example, the two big ones, and that's a problem. At the same time, there are online platforms that anyone can publish on, and those that have other problems because like anyone can publish there. I don't think they have a peer review process, right? And it's like that's the exact opposite problem, basically. Like if you quality control, not for quality, but for like excitingness of the discovery, that's bad. But if you have no quality control, it's obviously also bad, right? So,
it's kind of rough. But also, like, this is an interesting thing because I think in astronomy, it is they do review and like publish validation papers much more often.
Okay.
Especially in this like crisis is in cosmology.
Yeah.
That's going on. I think their papers do get published.
I mean, yeah, but that's also it's an ongoing thing where there's like different opinions on like what is causing this and how can we possibly resolve it. It is very much like I think every paper there effectively is cutting edge, even if
I mean could be, but even just the ones that just like revalidating the methodologies and like the data, how we calculate stuff.
I have seen some of those being discussed. Again, I'm not saying something like this never happens, but again, some fields it happens more often than others, and oftentimes, again, they might get published in like a smaller journal, which is still like good and it's still out there, but it just is treated differently. than when it is in one of the big ones. Oftentimes, it's tough, right? And then obviously, I kind of touched on it a little bit. Citations.
Yeah.
How good a paper is oftentimes judged almost exclusively by how often it is cited. That makes sense as a metric to some degree, like because if it's important, it's gonna get cited too. Because if you reference something, you have to cite the paper that it comes from, and so yeah, it makes sense. The problem is, and that's not unique to citations, but when a metric becomes a target, it's useless as a metric, right? Is I believe the saying, something to that effect.
Something like this, yeah.
And the problem is that if you want citations, I mean, paper mills obviously are a thing where like they'll publish just about anything, and then you can literally pay someone basically to publish a bunch of papers that cite your paper to increase citations. And I think oftentimes when those paper mills get found out to be such, they then get disregarded. But still, that is a problem, because as soon as something becomes a target, people are going to try to run up the numbers in ways that maybe aren't initially intended. And so, yeah, it's actually, funnily enough, that kind of relates to what I was saying earlier with overfitting. Where if you actually like target a certain thing, then it becomes less accurate. But yeah, not exact same thing. But yeah, it's a problem. Citations is still one of the better metrics because, again, outside of like the paper mill context, is still harder to like get citations in like improper ways. I mean, you can obviously keep citing yourself. Some scientists like to do that.
Yeah.
Citing their own previous papers. I mean, they're not always irrelevant, so it makes sense.
Sometimes it makes sense, yeah.
But, obviously that's also an easy way to run up your citations a little bit, at least.
So, like, what I just thought of, like, it kind of reminded me of GitHub and GitHub stars. And that doesn't seem to have a problem, right?
I actually don't know what you're talking about.
Like on GitHub, if you view a repository, you can star it.
Okay.
Like, it's like giving a like to something on other platforms. And, like, that seems to be running fine. I haven't seen anything weird going on there. Maybe it happens in smaller scale as well, similar to like these how do you call them?
Paper mills. Yeah, journals are essentially you can pay to. I mean, I guess you always pay to have your paper published, which is a whole other kind of worms. Like it's weird, right? That journals cost money to access and also cost money to publish.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird how that works out.
I do wonder who keeps all the money.
Yeah. No, I think I think maybe some of the papers were actually free to publish in, and then I think some of the other places that don't charge for access, then you have to pay to get. The point is the fact that
I don't know.
The fact that science does not exist in a vacuum is a whole other issue. We live in a society and all that, but the economic system in particular is kind of fucked up that. Science has to be profitable, which obviously gets to one of the other points that I had written down, which is grants. A lot of science isn't cheap. It has to be financed somehow. And oftentimes that is done through grants. Oftentimes those come from governments. Sometimes they come from companies when it is in the field where they want to advance research for their own purposes. And research grants are great. They're just there to further the science, essentially. But they incentivize to research specifically in the areas that are being financed, which might in some cases make sense why an area is financed, but it shapes where the research goes. Which,
I mean, I don't necessarily see that as like that bad a thing.
Yeah, it just sometimes there are areas of research that are really useful that could be more research, but they just don't get the funding. And that is frustrating sometimes. And I kind of get how, again, this is not avoidable, but it just seems that very few people actually finance science for its own sake. And again, how bad you think that problem is also depends a little bit on like how much you care about scientific progress as a potential good in its own right. I think we talked about that before. Like, is scientific progress and knowledge, is it a good thing even if nothing else comes of it? Tough.
Yes.
But that it's probably the least bad thing on the list, but it's just one of those things that came to mind where it is a bit unfortunate sometimes what science gets funded and what doesn't. You look at how particle accelerators, for example, are terribly expensive and take a lot of land, and you basically need a ton of government funding to actually build one. And sometimes projects get abandoned.
But at least they produce actual good results.
Yeah,
Particle accelerators.
when they get funded, right? It was supposed to be run in
Yeah.
the US. It was supposed to be bigger than, I think it was supposed to be the biggest in the world at the time.
Yep.
And I think that they just about started digging tunnels, and then they just shut it down again. The project, that's the accelerator never existed because it never got that far. Astrophysics, right? Like you have a bunch where projects get shut down. I think Hubble is shutting down some of its instruments.
Okay.
Entirely for funding reasons.
Oh, okay. That. I don't know if I like that. That seems dubious.
I think it was talk for entire space telescope that was supposed to be shut down at one point because of funding reasons. And like that just happens. Like sometimes projects get shut down even if they are still functional because it just costs money to run them.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just isn't there. I mean, NASA in particular, I think is terribly underfunded. And so a lot of the projects they're involved in, and I get it sometimes because some of the projects do end up having terrible cost overruns, and I think also how some of the projects are managed, where if they contract a private company and it's like cost plus, where it's like, oh yeah, we just pay whatever it costs you to do it plus a certain amount so that it's worth your while. And it's like,
okay.
And then it has cost overruns, and all of a sudden it costs them more. And it's like, oh, who could have seen that coming?
Yeah.
Not great.
Seems dubious.
Yeah, but I mean, again, whenever something intersects with capitalism, it always gets worse. It's just kind of how that happens.
Yeah.
And yeah, the fact that a lot of science ends up having to intersect with both capitalism, the economy, whatever, and governmental budgets and like government policy, it makes sense why certain areas have a tough time getting ahead. It's like, oh hey, if we want to do space research, it basically has to be funded by government because very little else is being funded. And then also, you might still have to outsource it to.
I haven't actually
companies.
thought about that, but yeah, man, that is kind of rough.
Yeah, you end up in a situation where just for like financial necessity, it is funded by government, and you don't get enough money to build it all yourself, so you have to then contract out companies that do it.
Yeah.
And so you kind of get squeezed from both sides. Rough.
That is super rough, man. I haven't thought about this, but yeah, you couldn't do space science without government funding.
I mean, it just now starts where like it's a little bit more plausible because launches are getting cheaper with reusable rockets.
Yes.
And so, because there is a financial incentive now, with programs like Starlink, is justifying SpaceX existing, and is therefore allowing them to develop better rockets, which then make launching per mass cheaper, which then universities can build like little CubeSats that they can on like a rideshare mission get into orbit fairly cheaply, but like that is still like very limited. And again, it's like mostly just orbital stuff.
Extremely limited. You wouldn't launch some probes with that like scan the night sky or whatever.
Yeah.
Or like look at the sun to like gather some data.
Hilariously enough, most things in space are trying not to look at the sun.
Yeah. Most aren't. Yes, that's true.
It's just
there are some that are specifically set out to look at the sun.
Yeah, but it's funny because like space telescopes and stuff will oftentimes like intentionally be turned away from the sun or like have like a thing that could blot out the suns because it's just too much light to see anything else.
Not just see anything else, it would probably just burn through it.
Yeah, I mean,
since it's like focused all in one spot.
Yeah. No, but yeah,
Yeah.
space science is in a particularly rough spot because it's just so terribly expensive. I saw something recently about why it is so tough to land on the moon now when they did it easily in the 60s. Easily. But when they managed to do it well in the 60s, it's like, well, A, they're not sending people, so you have to have it all automated. And
Yeah.
B, it turns out they have a fraction of the budget that they used to. Turns out that does matter.
Surprisingly, it does, yeah.
Unsurprisingly, but yeah.
I mean, I would say kind of surprisingly, since you would assume like the tech improved so much that like it would cost dramatically
I
less.
mean, it does cost less, it's just not less enough to
Yeah, yes.
be able to do it quite. And again, the human factor is also something because I think they didn't do any like autonomous landings. I mean, they couldn't back then, and so
Yeah.
I think they had some orbiters maybe, but all of the landings were human controlled. And so it's no wonder that the modern landings have a tougher time, but there's no one on board to control it. You can't remotely control it because latency is too large. And so you just need to have like these camera systems that recognize like how flat the ground is and maybe some
Yeah.
sonar or whatever. And actually that probably doesn't work with an atmosphere. I don't know, LiDAR or whatever, like something.
Yeah.
And then I mean they do definitely use visual systems for a lot of the navigation, especially from higher up to like actually find the landing site and stuff like that. Because we do actually have a pretty good image of the moon. Like we have a lot of we've had a lot of
Really
orbiters
good one,
that
yeah.
have like meter accuracy, which is good enough for most things until you get really close. But yeah, no, the recent lander that tipped over. Well, recent it was like a year ago at this point, but there's like a lunar lander, a commercial one
Okay.
from an American company that tipped over. It's like, yeah, turns out as they were coming in, there was a rock that the landing leg hit,
Oh no.
and then it tipped because there was one pointing to the landing legs. It's like, okay, yeah.
That sucks.
Resolution wasn't great enough from the orbital images that they had to know that that particular rock was there, and the landing system happened to hit it. Yeah.
Oof, that's unfortunate. I haven't heard of this story. Did they manage to like write it somehow?
No, I mean they got some data out of it still, but yeah, no, it tipped over, and they just had to make do with a tipped over lander.
Man, gotta invest in like something to untip next time in case it
Yeah,
happens.
I guess it wouldn't even be that smart. I guess the other thing would just be more legs, right?
Yeah.
If you have 3 legs and one goes out, yeah, of course.
Or just like misuse some of the instruments to like push it.
Yeah, I mean that one also had the problem that it had a fairly high center of gravity because they had the tanks stacked on top of each other, which actually had a legitimate reason because it turns out, um, depending on how you line the tanks, you can have the thing that like some tanks like end up like getting lighter than the other tanks because there's different fuels
Yeah.
and they can burn in different ratios, and then you have to like adjust the steering so that it doesn't tip from that. And so they were like, "Oh, we'll be really clever. We stack them on top of each other. You have a higher center of gravity," uh, which turns out can also be a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, not
Bit unfortunate.
we're not even talking about bad science anymore. We're just talking about unfortunate things that happen as part of science. Do you want to say anything about bad science before we move on?
Yes, sure. So one point I wrote down is falsifiability is not the be all end all. And by that I mean like that just because your theory, your experiment is falsifiable doesn't actually make it good science. Because to make it good science you need also to like add a bit of value, right? Like there's gotta be some other reason to do it except to just say, oh yeah, this is true or this is wrong.
I suppose. I mean, again, we're getting into like the pure science thing where like you
Yeah.
could theoretically just find out. I mean, there are some things where it seems a bit silly. I always find it funny whenever there's a study that comes out and people are like, "Well, duh," and it's like,
Yeah.
yes. On the other hand, just because it seems intuitive doesn't mean it has to be true.
Yes.
Um,
But also not just for the intuitive thing. For example, like in particle physics, they're chasing very elusive particles, building more and more expensive testing setups, and they're just like kind of moving the goalposts. They're adjusting the theories like marginally each time because they're excluding such a small sliver of the possible ranges of particles it could be, where it's not even clear if that particle even exists in the first place.
yeah,
And yeah, it's just like eating up so much money. And there's not much progress that actually results from that.
yeah. I mean, the problem there is the question is, you don't know how useful it's going to be until you find it, right? So it's tough because, like, we found the Higgs boson, right? We experimentally proved that it exists.
Yes, but
Is it useful? I don't know. I don't think so.
it is.
Is it? Yeah. See,
Yeah.
that's the thing, right? So like,
But like, we knew for sure that it was gonna be there. We knew for sure in which relatively narrow spectrum
we
of
had a good reason to expect it to be there. Yeah. With the standard model, but yeah.
we were pretty sure like
Yeah.
how it looked like, what it weighed, like what the properties of it were. But right now with the chase for like the graviton, for example, or I always forget the actual names, but there's some other particles. They're like the dark matter particle, if it even exists as a particle.
Yeah.
In the first place,
but like,
that gets a lot of funding.
dark matter seems to be something, right? Like,
Yeah.
it seems to exist. Like, all of our observations work best with dark matter in place. I used to be one of those people who was like, dark matter is just like a made up thing that we make to make the math work, right? Let's just figure out how the math actually is supposed to work and just like get rid of it. But it turns out it's not just like the mass of galaxies. There's like other things that also support the idea of dark matter, and
there's actually a lot of stuff that supports it.
Yeah, and so I mean, finding ways to detect it. I'm sure there's some use for it.
Yeah.
So it's tricky, right? Because oftentimes you can only know how useful it is once you have discovered it.
Oh no, it will be very useful to know this. Like it will be extremely useful to know, to discover it. But I'm just arguing against the method of discovering it.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean,
because like first of all, we aren't even sure if it exists as a particle specifically, and we have such a huge range, like basically almost the entire range of like values it could be as a particle, that we gotta test somehow, and each test only covers like a teeny tiny sliver of it.
Yeah,
and costs billions of
process
dollars.
of elimination is rough if that's your approach.
And each time they do test and like it comes out negative, of course, they just, oh yeah, these couple predictions out of the millions are wrong. I guess we'll stick with the other ones.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like, what else are you gonna do though, right? So
yeah, maybe I don't know, do like develop other actual theories that would spend.
Let's develop more theories that we have to exclude.
Yeah, but like theories in the sense of like not just like tweaking the values of a particle slightly.
Yeah.
Just like.
So what are the odds that the graviton and dark matter are the same thing?
Maybe they are. Maybe they don't even exist.
Then they're definitely the same thing.
Maybe one exists, one doesn't.
Yeah, no, because dark matter has gravitational effects, but does not interact with light in any way that we we can't see it basically. Hence dark. And the graviton is the theoretical force carrying particle for gravity.
Exactly.
Now, I don't think they are gravitons, but that's a whole other can of worms, and I'm probably not qualified enough to actually make an assessment, but
yeah,
unlike dark matter, I do think gravitons don't exist because it turns out that it seems like gravity is just a consequence of the curvature of spacetime.
Well, yes, but you see it's incompatible with the standard model. So we gotta kind of reconcile those two somehow, and gravitons would be the usually preferred option.
Yeah.
Like quantizing gravity.
Yeah, anyways, that's
I
think a little too specific to talk about.
But the good thing, like in the case of the graviton, they do actually have a couple more theories for how that might work instead of relying on a graviton particle. Like other modes of interaction between the standard model and space-time.
Yeah.
Which could potentially explain it. But for the dark matter stuff, they're just chasing particles. I don't think they have anything else.
Yeah. Again, it's rough because I don't really know what else they would be doing.
Yeah, but like, I don't know.
Yeah, no,
Or at least design your experiments in a way that like maybe excludes more of the range.
yeah,
I don't
I
know.
don't have any answers to this
Yeah.
either.
I'm just saying that I do not consider it good science what
Okay,
they're doing.
that also gets into like that gets very much into subjective
Yeah, of
evaluation.
course.
Because like whenever you're doing something like that doesn't follow the scientific method, like oh yeah, I mean I guess the certain example that we haven't even talked about is when you have a conclusion and you work backwards to find your evidence.
Yeah.
It's always bad science, just on principle. Um, I think those sort of things where like that is like pretty objectively bad science because there's like a scientific process, and if you're like not doing that, you're basically
Mhm.
doing bad science. Now, I'm not saying the scientific method is perfect necessarily, but also we don't have anything better,
Yeah.
which kind of is the end of that for me until someone else comes up with something that's actually better. It's kind of like other issues like right, like democracy is like kind of flawed, but also it's not like a better way. Um,
Yeah. I mean, we do have variations on democracy and how to do that,
yes,
which some of them are dramatically better than others,
that is true.
which we could potentially implement, but we somehow don't because I don't know, it's probably hard to change the system once it's running.
Yeah, I mean it's another thing where like if you incentives online properly, it's tough,
Yeah.
right? I mean the drum system is actually like fine in some ways. I mean it's not entirely without flaws, but with the proportional representation, it's like one of the better ways of handling
Yeah.
things. Um, and it's very much on topic again. I mean, yeah, I mean there's some things with like direct democracy and like ballot initiatives, like you have them in the U.S. and like direct democracy, like it's in Switzerland, for example. Like there are some ways that
Hmm.
might in some ways be better. At the same time, there is a counter argument for that about expertise, where like the general populace want the expertise is a tax policy, for example, and like people often want lower taxes, but it turns out that you can't have lower taxes and better programs.
Yeah.
Like the government spending's got to come from somewhere. Um, anyways, very much off topic. How about your fact of the week?
Right. Have you heard of the Danish grading scale?
No,
Like,
what are they
like,
grading?
like in school,
Oh,
the grades.
I have not.
Like
I
in
don't think
Germany,
so.
we use from like the numbers from through six.
Yeah,
One being the best one, six being the worst. Um,
French uses 1 to 20, where 20 is the best, or France rather. French.
yep.
Uh, Americans use letter grades, which are basically like the German ones, except they don't have an E. But
Yes.
A B C D and F for fail.
Exactly. Russia, for example, use numbers one through five, where five is the best, one the worst. But the Danish one is very interesting. They call it the seven-step scale, and it has the grades 12, 10, 7, 4, 0, 2, 0, 0, and -3.
Huh.
Yes.
I get uneven steps. Honestly, that's not even a terrible thing. But like the zeros, what is 0, 2, 0, 0?
Yeah.
That's weird, and also negatives are a bit weird.
Yes. So they were in order of like best to worst as I read them out.
I figured.
Yeah. And I think from what I could gather it's done so it's really hard to like um modify the numbers in such a way to make them seem like they're something else.
Oh, I see.
Because it would
Yeah,
be really hard to turn one of the grades into a different one by like adding or like slightly erasing some.
I've seen some really good ones online. I think letter grades in particular.
Yeah.
There's some bizarre ones where like they'll like change it so that like an F turns into an A plus or something,
Mm-hmm.
and always very creative.
Yeah.
I feel like in the modern day, that's not as much of a problem when like most things aren't on paper anymore. Like even if you get it handed back on paper,
Mm-hmm.
like the school probably still has like. And actually, I don't know about our schools, but a lot of schools have computer systems that do that, or the teacher has even just like a book where they write down the grades, and unless
Yeah.
you get access to that book, you still can't actually change your grades. Like you might be able to fool your parents, but you won't be able to fool your teacher. You know.
Yeah, but it's like I think mostly for the parents anyway.
I mean, yeah, I suppose it's interesting. I never thought about that as an aspect of how you design a system,
Yeah.
and I do still find it a little silly. I feel like it shouldn't be the number one priority, but at the same time, whatever. You could just use regular numbers. I guess in the deck is 1 through 7 if you want to have 7 steps, and just like use stamps with the symbols from German number plates. The letters and numbers on German number plates are intentionally designed such that you can't alter them into any of the others. Despite the fact that it has every single alphabet letter and every single number from 0
I didn't know that.
through 9. But they're
I gotta look at that again. Then.
They're all pretty unique. There's also an easy way for me to usually tell foreign plates, because you can immediately tell that the letters look different. Because I think Germany's the only country that has like that particular design.
Yeah.
You can immediately tell when someone is like having like a Polish license plate or something. Like they have the Euroband on the side, and obviously they have the letters for the country if you look very closely. But even from afar, I can almost immediately spot a non-German plate, or a very old German plate, because we didn't always have this. But
Rue.
But you know the Germans.
The Germans do have like a very distinct font, but I never knew it had this kind of property.
Yeah, it's specifically designed such that you cannot alter one symbol into another convincingly.
Interesting.
So
okay.
you might be able to make like, I don't know, like a 5 look like an 8, but you can't make it look like the 8 symbol would be a license plate normally.
Yeah. It would look off probably.
Yeah, because they specifically designed them such that I guess no like letter has like is a subset of another basically.
Yeah.
So the I and the T probably are like somehow different, that you can't just like put a line.
Interesting. I'll have to look at that again.
Yeah, no, it's a specific example of that.
But
That actually could have been a fact of the weekend, all right.
Yeah. I mean, you could just claim it is.
And that was my fact of the week. Next topic. Yeah, no, I actually do have a fact of the week. And that is, have you heard of Abraham Lincoln?
Yeah.
So he was actually a really good wrestler.
Yeah.
It's a common set of fact, I think, that he wrestled. But apparently he's had around 300 victories and 1 loss.
Damn. All right.
And he is in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame as an outstanding American. I'm assuming it's the U.S. National.
That is, yeah. That's very impressive.
He's actually like he's dead, been for a while.
Yeah.
No, but he was like actually like a really good wrestler.
Didn't know that. That's kind of crazy.
I mean, it was also I think like a meter 95, so the guy's tall too. So that I think that helps.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what it is in feet right now. Which would be the more relevant unit for where he comes from, but who cares? Which brings us to our halftime show. Once again, playing Connections.
Hey.
And no, we don't want hints. The words today are plaza, overlook, bonus, discount, club, promotion, Ritz, animal, raise, turtle, goldfish, forget, pug, ignore, equity, and Eloise.
What the hell is that?
That's a name. It's a woman's first name.
Okay.
I don't know any other context in which that would make sense.
Yeah.
Goldfish, turtle, and pug are all animals, but I wouldn't put animal with it because that's a category thing, right?
Yeah.
Promotion, discount. Maybe it's different. Bonus and raise are different from discount and promotion, right? It could also be discount, as in to discount.
Ew, yeah, it could be.
Overlook, discount. Forget? No, ignore? Is it forget? It wouldn't be forget, would it? Discount, overlook, ignore? Well, plaza, bonus, club, promotion, Ritz, animal, raise, turtle, goldfish, pug, equity, Eloise. Yeah, I think it would be forget, right?
Almost has to, yeah.
We're happy with that, are we?
Yeah, let's try it.
Hey! Disregard! I mean, promotion, raise, bonus, equity, things you could get in a company for doing well? equity would be a stake in the company.
Yeah.
Raise would be more money. Bonus would be more money just one time. And promotion would be a better job.
It seems a bit too simple, but yeah, sure.
Too simple. With equity? I think equity is not as obvious in this.
Really?
Good things to get at work. I mean, there are 3 animals and the word animal, which just isn't how those categories are supposed to work, I think. Club and plaza seem like they could be places.
Yeah.
But then what? The Ritz? Like the Ritz-Carlton? Like the hotel? Like that seems a bit off. Is Eloise also like the name of a chain of hotels? But then again, animal, goldfish,
How about crackers?
Ritz crackers.
Yeah, there's also like those
goldfish crackers?
Yeah.
Animal crackers, probably.
Could be. And what else?
Well, I mean, either club or turtle, I would assume, unless Eloise is like a... Eloise is tough because it could just be a brand name or something. Like Ritz.
Mm-hmm.
Turtle would make sense. I could imagine turtle shaped crackers.
Yeah.
Club would make sense, as like a... Oh, club crackers. Like, you get them along with your club soda. I don't know. Yeah, club crackers are just white people that like to go to that go to the discotheque. Yeah, that is...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we do have a couple mistakes that we can make.
I'm also trying to think of how the rest would then fit together, right?
Yeah. I mean, I have no idea.
I mean, maybe Eloise could also be a last name. Plaza certainly is. Pug might be. I mean, for all I know, Ritz is, I believe. That's where I believe both the crackers and the hotel get their name from. But that's also a stretch, right? Because I don't really know for a fact. And it's like, oh, those are all names. Some first, some last, maybe all last. Is there any male names that get to also be last names?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also goes back to like patronyms, essentially. So yeah, I mean, it would make sense. But Eloise is a bit weird here. I do like the cracker idea. I just genuinely have no idea what the last one would be. I mean, I want to say turtle, but that is genuinely just me making it up.
I have no idea either.
I mean, I guess we could see if at least off by one.
Pug. I don't know.
Pug?
You'd probably call them dog crackers instead or something?
Yeah, I was going to say, if they're supposed to look like dogs, then I don't think you would call them pug crackers.
Not look like, but for.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I mean, dog treats, right? Like, you wouldn't call them... I don't know. It seems weird to me, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. I guess let's try this.
Yeah,
just
sure.
see if it says off by one or something.
One away, yeah.
It's most likely turtle that's wrong, but like... I mean, we do have 3 mistakes remaining, and there are 4 possible other words it could be.
We have pretty good chances.
We could try the hard way. So, what do you feel more positive about, club or pug?
Honestly, I don't feel good about club at all.
Okay.
I feel more confident in plaza than club.
So one way, which almost certainly means that... Well, it means either pug and turtle and 2 of the ones we just tried are in a category, or the 3 that we tried both times and 1 other word.
Yep.
I have to be very careful about that because we made that mistake, I think the first time we played it, where we had 2 1-away, then we figured that therefore the 3 that were consistent must be in the same, but it was always one of those that was wrong.
Yes, it could be that pug, turtle, goldfish, and animal are the group, for example.
It could be, yes. I guess if we try 1 more, we know for a fact if it is that or not.
Yes.
I'm voting for club.
Alright, sure. It is.
Kinds of crackers.
Club crackers, huh?
Again, it makes sense to me because, again, club soda is a drink, right? So, like, it checks to put club in front of like a food item. That does make sense to me.
Interesting. Okay, I gotta see that. Pug turtle plums and
I was just like, let's see if we can
Yeah,
have an
yeah.
idea of what it is before we click it. I mean, I believe I did suggest last names as a possibility. But that seems... It would still have to be last names of people with the same first name or famous people in a certain category or something like that. If it is last names. And I don't know for a fact that it would be the case, but last names of actresses or something. But that still seems like totally particular. Seems like a bit odd. Pug as well, a little bit. I was say words with foreign origins, but that doesn't really work out either, does it? I'm pretty sure
No,
Plaza
true.
has a Roman origin. Eloise sounds French. But then Pug and Turtle, I have no idea where that comes from. And also, most English words have foreign origins, so it's not like if you dig far enough, so it's not really that special either. Unless they all come from French specifically, but like Place could be the origin for Plaza. And Piazza sounds more like it, I would say, like Italian, but I don't know. I don't know. I mean, we could just enter it.
Yeah.
It's not part of the game to guess the categories in this case. Featured in Eloise.
What the hell is that?
Well, it's a book, a movie, or a poem or something, right? Like, I wouldn't know. Eloise. 2016 American thriller.
There it is. Maybe the book.
Eloise is an episode of Sopranos. Eloise Hawking is a character of the TV series Lost. I could have told you that. Eloise Books. That sounds probably like it. 1950s book series by Kay Thompson. And the first one of those, Eloise, is a children's book.
Oh, that would check out.
Yeah, so it's one of those where, like, if you're American, you probably know about this children's book from your childhood. If you're not American, tough luck.
Yep.
I don't know if it's that, but like, often that's how it ends up being with like cultural references. Half.
Let me look up club crackers.
And let me go to the second topic. Good questions to ask, courtesy of conversationsworld.com. They're just rectangular crackers.
Don't think I've seen them before.
Apparently it's a brand, or the
Yeah.
brand name for them. What kinds of things do you like to cook or are good at cooking?
Well, ramen, mostly. All kinds of noodles. Anything.
I mean, do you actually like make them in a pot, or do you just literally just like pour hot water over like pre-made ramen? Because that latter one I would not necessarily consider cooking.
Yeah, no, I don't really do the latter one.
Okay.
I do actually cook my stuff.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
But because it's like, yeah, sure, it's a simple thing, but like,
I usually do it in like not even a pot, but like in a pan where I like cook the noodles in that, and then directly after that, like make the sauce with the noodles in the same pan. So I like have to wash less dishes afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, definitely fair with that. For me, it's mostly just like scrambled eggs for the most part, or like variations thereupon, right? Like basically like a stir fry. Usually I have eggs in there, so it's usually always like scrambled eggs, but then it's like some vegetables in there, throw some mushrooms in there, whatever. Like just it's not just eggs, but yeah.
And I actually do struggle with eggs, like just breaking them correctly. I just cannot manage it.
Huh. I usually do it with a mug or a cup. Just like on the corner, crack it, put it in the cup.
Yeah, this thing, I don't know. I'm just incapable of like breaking them apart.
You crack them on the edge.
Yeah, I know. People have tried showing me this before, and like I don't know. I just
it ain't.
I
will say, depending on like if you hit it right at the first instance, sometimes it does take a bit too much force, and you end up getting some egg on your fingers. Sometimes it also like gets very easy, and you might actually like have like a bit of the shell slip, but like most of the time, I feel like it's like a fairly consistent thing. And like getting a bit of egg on your finger when you're cooking with eggs, that's like not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
Also, by the way, the cup thing is recommended because then if an egg is bad, you just throw it away without having to like throw everything else away. So if you because especially if you do like if you do like make eggs as like the main thing, and you have like 10 eggs or something that you're opening, and the last one is bad, and just open it straight in the pan or in your mixer or whatever, like rough. To be fair, I've never had an actual bad egg, but that's just how I've been taught to do it.
Yeah. You could also do the float test.
Yeah, right. I mean, but then you you need water.
Yeah.
It's just like this is like part of the process, and you need something to like open them up on anyways, and so the cup just makes sense. You just do it on that. You crack it on that. You open it, put it in the cup, maybe sniff it, and then you pour it in.
I guess
wherever. Yeah. Because then I also usually have like a mixing thing. You put in the eggs, you put in some salt and pepper, and just like shake it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
What life skills are rarely taught but extremely useful? Well, I mean, if we mean taught as in school settings, then cooking does come to mind. Although I think some schools do actually offer it.
We did actually have like some cooking classes. Like I think we had like 3 in total.
Okay, yeah, it's one of those things. The German school system, with its 3-track nature, actually like does do that like a lot of the practical skills more if you get towards the Hauptschule.
Yeah.
Problem being, it's generally also seen as a worse school.
Yes.
I think I said this before, and I'll keep saying it, but the main problem with the German school system is the perception of the whole like worse, like bad, middle, good thing, rather than it being seen as vocational training, middle, and academic. Middle is a bit weird in that case because why middle? But that is essentially what it is in some ways, where like you learn more practical skills in what is seen as the worst school, and you learn more academic skills in what is seen as the best school. Because they're supposed to prepare you for different tracks of life. But because of their reputation over time, it kind of is bad, middle, good as well, because
I don't think
if you aren't a very good student...
Like, it started out bad. Didn't it?
I guess the problem is I just don't know, because I don't even know when that split started happening.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure when my grandparents were going to school, that was already a thing.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, right? I don't have the personal experience there. But, it makes sense, though, right? Like, not everyone wants to, like, do a job that requires a university degree.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to be a carpenter, then actually, like, having some courses of woodworking in your school setting makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And they do offer those. Like, it's actually a thing. Like, it does make sense to go to that school, but, like, we literally had to get, like, recommendations. They're actually binding for, like, a couple of years. Actually, get, like, a recommendation to, like, get into the better schools, but, like, anyone could go to the worst.
Yeah.
Which, again, like, just reinforces the idea that some of these are better than others.
Yeah. Like, a major rebranding would be in order, and, like, some slight system changes.
Yeah, the problem is, there's no way of rebranding it, really, that isn't, like, nakedly obvious. Because, obviously, if you just, like, keep the schools as they are, and just, like, change what they're called and change what the curriculum is, the legacy will still hang on. You would basically have to, like, completely reshuffle the students as well while you're at it, to, like, get any semblance of it, like, being a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're not gonna do that.
Yeah.
It's a problem. But, and yeah, sure, I mean, the good school is, academically speaking, the best. But that's not the only thing that matters. And yeah, I mean, any life skills, right? I mean, taxes is obviously the one thing that people always mention.
Obviously.
You don't get taught how to file your taxes, which, granted, in Germany you don't really have to. If you work a regular job, like, the
job does it for you.
Yeah, you don't really have to file your taxes. It's just if you have multiple income sources, or if you're self-employed, or anything like that, or if you have tax deductions, because obviously if it gets automatically filed, you also don't get any deductions. You'd have to still file yourself to get those. But yeah, it's less necessary, but still, it's still good to know. And I think a lot of those real life skills, right? Like, again, most of, like, actual, like, working with your hands kind of stuff, like, There's like a little bit of that in the German school system, but again, it just depends on what kind of school you go to. And like any life skills. I mean, like household skills, like cooking. We talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if you need to be taught how to clean. Like that's pretty straightforward. Like how do you dust? You drag the duster over the surfaces that are dusty, right? Like, but
that
are
like maybe organization skills.
I was gonna say like organizing, maybe, yeah.
I think what could also be useful is first aid.
Oh yeah, we actually did have first aid courses offered in school, but they were not part of the curriculum.
Yeah.
You could do those, and I think they were certified for. I think a lot of people that did like a driver's license for a moped or whatever, the scooter or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
A lot of those people did the first aid kit at school, the first aid test at school because that qualified them for that. But yeah, no, it wasn't mentorally taught. I mean, you have to do one if you get driver's license.
Obviously.
You say that. That's probably. I was gonna say you need a German thing. Definitely, I'm almost positive it's not in America. The case in America, at least not everywhere. Which is where I believe the book of Rollins is from. But yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but like, so most people do learn first aid at some stage in their life. But yeah, why not teach it in schools?
Yeah.
Um.
Also, while we're on first aid, it might be useful if you would be forced to have a refresher every, like, I don't know, 5 years.
Yeah, especially because it's not just about forgetting.
Yeah.
Sometimes our understanding also changes.
Yeah.
Mouth to mouth is not actually that good or important. I mean, good is, it's not necessarily counterproductive, but it's just not very useful most of the time. Like chest compressions, right? Like that's what it's all about. If you want to revive someone, it's getting the heart start. That's what matters. That you don't need to blow air into their lungs, most of which is carbon dioxide anyways. Actually, most of it's nitrogen, but it's less breathable, the air that comes out of you, than the one that's just like around.
Yeah.
It's mostly about getting the heart started, and the rest will mostly just solve itself. I mean, obviously, yeah, if there's wounds and stuff, like biting wounds, and yeah, but like in terms of resuscitation, like mouth to mouth is actually like not that important. But yeah, no, first aid definitely.
Also, on a similar kind of thing, like just like how to like fight fires, like small ones. Which kinds of fire extinguishers to use for what?
That especially is something that I think most people don't know.
Yeah.
Like just like pull the pin and point it at the fire and press the trigger. Like again, most people I think can figure that out.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, don't throw water on a grease fire, right? Like that's kind of important.
Like I did one little thing with work where all of us got like a certificate for this. We had like an hour or so where we had like an instructor show us not even all of the fire extinguishers, just like a couple of them. And dude, I cannot remember anything from that anymore.
Yeah.
That was so much info.
Yeah.
How is it not taught somewhere else?
It is kind of surprising. And I think, again, like a lot of their like life skills, I think most people have like kind of an intuitive understanding where the school system comes short because they'll realize, no one ever taught me this.
Yeah.
Now, granted, we did just talk about the school system. Rarely taught is technically a more broad question, but I think, for example, like I was taught cooking by my mother, right? So, like, sure, right? So, like, it is not. I mean, it is maybe rarely taught to boys, but it's like there are certain things that are taught to you, but not necessarily by the system. And like, why shouldn't it be taught to you by the school system? It makes some degree of sense when you think of where the school system came from. It also makes some degree of sense when you think about how society changed and how certain things that. I mean, also like, I'm pretty sure like when the school system was invented, you didn't have to file your taxes.
Could be.
I don't know exactly how that worked back then, but like.
But also, society, as you mentioned, changed, especially in the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years, quite dramatically.
Yes, but also again, the school system has been around for much longer and has changed a lot less.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a lot of the expectations of like what you would be taught outside of school just no longer apply.
Yeah, and even some of the things that you just need to know now that you
Yeah.
didn't need to know back then. I think they are actually starting to teach social skills to younger students in some places.
Mm-hmm.
Which, the fact that it's necessary is like kind of worrying about like societal trends, but at the same time, yeah, no, it is good. I mean, we did learn how to. Oh yeah, fun thing. We learned how to write CVs in English class. I think we also might have also done it in French class. We never actually did it in German.
We actually did. It didn't really help me though because I have a slightly different problem with this. But yeah, we actually did. It was quite nice.
Yeah, but it's like the first thing. Yeah, I guess because we also the first thing we do when we come out of school is not apply for jobs, it's apply to universities. So I guess it's also like the thing that is like again different type of school, different context.
Expectations.
But still, you're gonna apply to a job at some point, and it's not like they're gonna teach you that in university because German universities are like very much you learn only things about your degree. There's also a difference, interestingly enough. American colleges have a lot of general courses that you have to take, irrespective of what you major in. As a matter of fact, I think a lot of colleges like, oh, you don't have to pick your major in your first year because you just take all the general courses at first.
Okay, so a quick question: is there a difference between college and university? Since you now kind of compare those two.
Yeah, so
same.
So I believe structurally a university can have multiple colleges. So, but in terms of like from a student perspective, there's not really a difference between like universities and colleges as we talk about them. It's just in America because their school system isn't as good. There are certain skills that just would be taught in high school here that they then only learn once they go to college. So that is, I think, a big part of the reason why they have more general courses in colleges as well.
Okay.
Because their general education level coming out of high school is worse than yours.
I see.
But yeah, no, you have one university, multiple colleges, but that's not really the thing. No, I think
because I think in Germany there is a distinction, right?
I don't know if there is like a German equivalent to colleges specifically. That is, there are different types of universities. You can I think actually no, I think no, I think they're just universities, right? Like
yeah, there's universities, but I also went to a college for a like profession.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Berufskolleg.
Oh, yeah. No, for me, this is like a vocational school because there's also the term Berufsschule.
Yeah.
Which is what I was used to hearing. But yeah, yeah, that has nothing to do with university in that sense. That's a whole different thing.
So very similar term.
Yeah.
Very differently. Not the first time it happened.
Did you know that in the U.S. they call preschool kindergarten and kindergarten preschool, or sometimes also pre-K, as in pre-kindergarten?
You've told me that recently.
You know,
it has blown my mind.
It's weird how that works.
Yeah.
Let's do at least one more question because we kind of. I mean, it's great when we talk a lot about something, but we do technically have questions that we'll answer. What movie universe would be the worst to live out your life in? Surely something post-apocalyptic, right?
Not even necessarily.
I mean, I guess it could be dystopia, which isn't necessarily. But yeah, I mean,
it's not necessarily. I'm more thinking like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because like, man, the catastrophes happen like every other weekend.
Yes, but
at least it feels like that.
But it's basically, I think, as the average citizen, it's just a slightly worse version of the real world, though.
I wouldn't say slightly worse.
I mean, okay, so the snap was quite something, but otherwise, most of it is still localized, right? Like, okay, Sokovia, like if you're a random Sokovian, that sucks. You know, New York is obviously, you don't want to live in New York if you live in the Marvel universe. But like, if you live here in the MCU, then the snap is going to be the only thing that affected you. Like maybe there are some Sokovian refugees or something, but like, if you live like in the middle of nowhere Germany or in the middle of nowhere US or whatever, like nothing much is going to happen.
Maybe, yeah.
But if you live, I mean, I was thinking fictional universe overall. I don't think they've made a 40K movie yet, but like that would also be rough.
Yeah. Huh.
And yeah, that's sort of more where I was thinking. Like that's definitely a lot rougher than the real world, but every now and again there are like supernatural like events that are like additional,
Yeah.
effectively just like natural disasters as far as you're concerned. Um, like that's sure it's worse than the real world, but which is one of those things where like people think like, oh, this is the universe I want to live in, and say chances are you wouldn't have powers. It's probably going to be worse for you.
Another side of this would be probably like universes where it's like everything is like super happy and upbeat all the time. That could like actually be
Yeah,
worse than like some of the post-apocalyptic ones,
yeah, but I
or
think
like apocalyptic ones.
I mean I think you could also just make an argument for like Game of Thrones or the Rings, that sort of thing, where it's just like, yeah, sure. I mean, this is a nice universe, but also they are positively medieval in terms of technology,
Yeah, sure.
and so for someone from here, that's probably not going to be great. Um, but yeah, I think it's probably just like, no, Mad Max,
Oh yeah,
right? Like the
that would be bad. Yeah,
something in that vein. It might not be the single worst one, but like
it would.
I think that's actually
Mhm.
that's both post-apocalyptic and a bit. I mean, I guess most post-apocalyptic ones are dystopian in some ways, but um,
I mean, in a similar way, vein, Dune maybe.
yes. I mean, haven't seen.
To be fair, I haven't seen anything of it.
I was gonna say I haven't seen the movies. I haven't read the
All I
books.
know is that
Actually,
like there's like a big desert and
it was like just like one planet,
stuff is
man.
bad. Yeah,
There are other planets in
I know
Dune.
there's like 3 planets that are relevant there, and one of them is a desert.
Yeah, with sandworms. You know, like
Yeah.
teensy tiny sandworms. um, yeah. Um, see, I want to read those books at some point. I intentionally haven't watched the Dune movies because I wanted to read the books first.
Yeah.
But I also don't have a foreseeable plan of when I'm going to read the books, which is the other thing. The movies are supposed to be pretty good, the new ones. I think I have seen like the old Dune movie once, way back when, but I don't remember much of it.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I think Mad Max is probably like up there at the very least, so I think I have a good answer. I was gonna also say like most horror movies, but then when you think about it, it's like, oh, if you live in the universe of Friday the 13th, there's like a couple people every now and again that get killed by a serial killer. That happens to me. It's like, sure, if you're like in the plot of the movie, that's probably not good for you, but like if you just live somewhere, that's probably fine.
Probably doesn't change anything.
Yeah. So that's the thing where like the horror movies that seem terrible are mostly just harmless on like an individual level. I mean, obviously there are some that are like larger,
Yeah.
and then a lot of the like superhero and fantasy movies that seem all positive and whatnot, like actually are probably worse for the average citizen. I mean, you could even list some like Star Wars, where it's like it really depends on where. Like Tatooine doesn't seem that pleasant,
Yeah.
but Coruscant is like fine. It's maybe like dystopic in a different way a little bit, but it's fine, right? And then like I don't know, like there are other planets that are just like much more recognizable to like our way of life, and it really depends.
Mm-hmm.
Which is part of why I chose Mad Max as well, because it's like one setting. It's like the post-nuclear Earth.
Yeah.
Like you don't, because if you say like, oh, which fictional universe do you want to live in, and you pick Star Wars, that can go either way.
That's why I would pick Star Trek instead.
I mean, yeah, I mean you don't want to live in the neutral zone necessarily, but I think you
Yeah.
could still move back. I think that's the thing where like
Yeah.
I don't know how the neutral zones elements work entirely. Um,
I I'm gonna be honest, I don't even know what the neutral zones are.
the neutral zone between the Federation and the Cardassian Empire, where it's basically a demilitarized zone between them. But there
Cardassian
are,
Empire?
yes, the Cardassians. You know the Cardassians,
No.
the white guys. with weird forehead ridges, which is a very unique trait in Star Trek.
What? No.
From they're like the main villains in DS9. Well, main villains, not really. They're
Alright.
early on. They're sort of the main bad guys of DS9.
I have seen DS9, but only like some random episodes that were on the television.
Yeah,
So I probably just missed all of those.
but like Gul
What were
Dukat,
the-
for example, is like one of the bad guys from.
I have no idea who it is.
One of the freaking the Taylor is also he's also a Cardassian, although he's not as bad of a guy. But
Taylor?
yeah, you know,
God.
it's an occupation.
It's been so long ago. I don't
Gar.
remember all of this.
But you know, there are suboptimal places to live in the Star Trek universe as well, but less so, especially if we assume that you're human. Because then you'd be limited to human settlements, which are mostly still somewhat associated with the Federation, at least. And obviously, the Federation is a nice place to live. Although it has to be said that we don't really know that much about the average Federation citizens.
Yeah.
Surprisingly little. But yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be a post-scarcity society, so yeah, it's got to be pretty good.
Yeah, gotta be good old communism.
I mean, basically,
Yeah.
they don't have money.
Mm-hmm. And not in a bad way.
Right? Yeah. No. Replicators, man. Great
Yeah.
technology. I think it's time for the songs of the week.
Probably, yeah.
Let me set up our audio for songs of the week,
Yes. Right.
and then let's move on to the actual song of the week scene. Where, of course, first of all, I'm going to ask you the question: what is your song of the week?
My song of the week is Life in Technicolor 2 by Coldplay.
Okay, that was my fault. The fact that I didn't like the frame at the end there is, but yeah, it's not bad. I mean, it's not close to my favorite Coldplay song, but yeah, no, they have better ones, but it's not bad. Which I guess
That's a high praise coming from you for my songs.
Yeah. Anything you want to say about it?
No, really. I just actually I do. Like I heard it recently again a bit and thought, okay, yeah, why not? Sounds good. I think JJ will appreciate it, and you seem to, yeah.
Yeah. So my song of the week is "Far From Home" by Five Finger Death Punch.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I don't know. It's not so my type, actually.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like it. There's not anything particularly deep about this. I've known this for a while, but not like super long. But yeah, no, it's a good song, and that's why I picked it.
Yeah.
Which brings this episode of Trash Talk Podcast to a close. If you like what you see, then give the video a like. If you want to see more videos like this, then subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have something to say, leave a comment or join us for links in the description below. Sergej?
That's it.
That's it.